As we continue on in the Gospel of John, I have been thinking this week about kids who do and struggle from early childhood trauma and difficulties here. Why have you been thinking about that? Well, my wife Joanne and I have been spending a lot of time with some foster kids who are a part of our church family. And so we have done over the last few years, as we've done this, we've gone to some trainings, we've read some books, and just been learning about what that is. And it's pretty amazing how kids can go through these horrendous things and then real healing can happen in their lives. And so one of the books is by a guy by the name of Bruce Perry, and he's one of the experts in this early childhood trauma. So he talks about, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because I get to say a big word, and that always excites me. But he talks about neurosequential training of kids. And what is it? So what does that mean, neurosequential? So neuro, the brain, and sequential, that you have to, the brain, as kids, we grow, we have this development that we move in. And so neurosequential means you follow the natural pattern that the brain moves in. And you do it with your parenting, you do it in education, you do it in therapy settings. And the reason why this is important is because of how our brains work. So here's a look at our brains and these different areas of the brain. So first, a kid develops their brainstem, right? That's all the stuff about rhythm, like your heartbeat. And that what kids need is that consistency and that steady rhythm and that steady beat. And then once that's developed, then kids can work on attachment and emotions and behavior. And then once that part of the brain is developed, then kids can work on thinking and inhibiting, right, their behavior. Like they can say, oh, I'm thinking I should do this now, but I don't, that might not be a good idea. And then they can work on actual learning. But if a kid has faced severe trauma as a little guy, right, they may still be back at the brainstem. And so we, as adults, are like, well, you're supposed to know how to inhibit your behavior, but a kid is way, way down somewhere else. So they talk about the difference between brain age and birth age. So you can be 10 years old as your birth age, but your brain age might be back at 3 or 4. And so as you walk with those kids, you go back to 3 or 4 and you walk with them where they're at and you meet them where they're at and you help that part of their brain develop. And then you slowly build it up. And the goal is to get a full understanding of childhood development and use that understanding to heal kids. And so they look at, right, it says what traumatized children, this is Bruce Perry again, what traumatized children can teach us about loss, love, and healing. And again, he is this world-renowned you know what I'm trying to say. He's that. And so he's been all over the world. Some of you, anybody remember the tragedy in the early 90s in Waco, Texas? And there was like a cult, for lack of a better term, and during the raid, they set the place on fire. So the kids who were left over from, like, he's called into those types of situations, right? Like the children who were left, who lost their parents in that, he works with them, right? He works with, the name of the book is The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. Literally, the story is of a kid who was raised in a dog cage for years. Now, when we do this and we talk about, you got to, I go back to this and you see this. If you're a young I remember being a young parent and I remember being freaked out that I was doing it all wrong, okay? I'm like, oh my gosh, am I doing that? Am I functioning, am I focused on the brainstem, right? He's dealing with severe trauma, right? So if you're in the room, this doesn't apply to you, right? You're doing it, okay? Like, you're not, I mean, maybe you thought about putting your kid in a dog cage, okay? But you haven't actually done it and left them there for years at a time, okay? She got out, right? I'm still dealing with it, right? So, but even though this doesn't apply, right, as parents, it does apply in terms of how we think. Because the question that I'm asking this week as I go through this is there a spiritual sequence? Do we, as people who follow Jesus Christ, as God, right? Is there a sequence that we go through and understanding who God is and then living into that reality? So today we want to, as if the goal of that type of therapy is to fully understand child development so kids can heal and find love, right? If we're going to understand the spiritual sequence, then, right, understand Jesus fully. That's what we want to do. We want to understand who Jesus is fully. So today we go to John 11. And the story is the story of the raising of Lazarus. I'm going to give you, if you're new to Scripture, here's Reader's Digest condensed version. Lazarus is dead. Jesus comes along. He raises him to life. Okay? But now there's a lot of detail we got to get to understand this. So we're gonna look at this story through the eyes of three of the main people who it affects. And so what happens is Jesus has moved out of the area around Jerusalem because there are people who want to kill him, right? The tension is building up. And so he's moved out, and as he's away, his friend Lazarus dies. And so now Jesus is moving back to where Lazarus is. It's the town of Bethany. It's about 2 miles away from Jerusalem. And he's coming back through, because he's heard his friend Lazarus has died. All right? So Lazarus has 2 sisters. So as we look at this story and we try to figure out who Jesus is, fully understand who Jesus is, we're going to look through his sister Martha, his sister Mary, and then through Lazarus himself. So here we go. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. All right, so let's understand Jesus through the eyes of Martha here now. So first, she says, yes, Lord. Now there's 2 understandings of Lord here. First understanding is go back 500 years into our history, the history of the world, when you did have lords and ladies, and I know some countries they still have a few people who, figuratively are that. But the Lord back in the day was the person you follow. If they were your Lord, they were the one who ruled over you. They told you, right, what to do, when to do it, how to do it. That's one sense of Lord. Also now go back from the Middle Ages all the way back to the ancient world. In the ancient world, the Jewish people didn't think you should say God. And they didn't think you should say God because they wanted to respect God. So they said, well, we're just humans, so we're not close to God. God is so much above us, so much bigger than us. We're not even going to say the name. It wouldn't be proper to do that. We wouldn't be showing proper respect. So they had other words that they used that meant God. And one of those, Lord, Adonai, right? This is how, when we say that, we're really saying God. So when she says, yes, Lord, she's saying, you're the one I follow, and you are God. And then she says, you are the Messiah. All right? Now, Messiah is the exact same word as Christ, and is the exact same word It's not the exact same word, but it means the same thing as Savior. So Jesus is Messiah, he's Christ, he's Savior. And in the ancient world, the Jewish people, when they think of Messiah, Christ, Savior, they are thinking of a political Savior. They are thinking of someone who will come in and save them from the Romans who are ruling over them. I mean, they can worship at the temple and they can do their own thing, but when push comes to shove, the Romans are in charge and the Romans rule. And they don't like anybody. They don't want that, right? So when they are looking at Jesus, they're looking for the Messiah, the Christ, the Savior, who will lead them to a political victory. All right. So to understand Jesus fully, we have to understand this idea of fully. So first, he's fully God. That's what Martha recognizes. When she says, yes, Lord, I believe you are the Messiah who's come into this world, right? You are fully God. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Now, if we're looking at spiritual, sequential, what's the sequence that we go in as Christians as we learn what it means to follow Jesus Christ? First, we recognize that Jesus is God. He's fully God. And when he says, I am the resurrection, all right, that is, we die, we go to heaven, and then, not to get too deep into the theological weeds here, and then it gets even better, right? Heaven's not the end. The resurrection is the end, right? The new heavens and the new earth, and we're in our resurrected bodies. Behold, I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and there's no longer any sea, which means what? There was no longer, the sea is where all the evil in the ancient world, the ancient mind believed that's where evil came from, the bottom of the sea, right? There's no longer any sea, there's no longer any evil. That's the resurrection. But as Christians, we can focus there, right? Someday we'll be in heaven. Someday they'll be in the resurrection. But I am the resurrection and the life. I am the life now, in this moment. How you live now, how you carry out your life now, and how you get free now, which is, so we're just at the beginning, right? Neurosequential, spiritual sequential. What's the sequence? First, we acknowledge that he is God and he's fully God. And of course, at this point, we lose a lot of people, right? They say, well, I can't believe that. But we believe because we see the witness of Scripture and we see the witness of history, and we also know the power of God in our lives. So, first, he's fully God. Now we come to sister two. We come to Mary. So basically, Martha runs out, right? She was at the equivalent of Philip's funeral home, sitting there with everybody. She hears that Jesus is coming, and she runs out. Now here comes Mary. She's sitting there with everybody, and now she goes out to see Jesus. And it's pretty much same deal, right? So now, as we take a look at his interaction with Mary, we're going to see his full humanity. So he's fully God, but he's also fully human. So we acknowledge he's God. What does it mean to acknowledge he's human? And what's the call if we accept that he's fully human? So here it goes. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, what'd she say? Same thing her sister said. Because they recognize he's fully God. Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. Completely different interaction. Same question, completely different interaction. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him, he asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." He was deeply moved in spirit. He's fully God and he's fully human. Now, I love that English because I think it's poetic. He was deeply moved in spirit. However, if we get at the Greek behind it, the Greek behind it is a little more raw and a little more earthy and a little more just gut level. Because when it says he was deeply moved in spirit, I want you to think of losses that you suffered. And it could be literal deaths, or it could be the other types of deaths that we go to. The death of a marriage when we go through a divorce, or the loss of a business that we struggled hard, or the loss of a job that we've worked so hard for, or the loss of our health as we struggle with an illness. But think of a loss, and think of when you got, like my buddy Dan, when is Dr. Ham having this little trouble in my throat, and oh yeah, this is what you got going on. And that thing we get in the pit of our stomach, where you just don't feel right, like your body just doesn't feel right, and maybe you have a little trouble eating, and it's just, you literally feel it. And we say stuff like, "I don't feel like myself." And there's another piece of this deeply moved in spirit that if we dig even a little bit deeper into the Greek, so like the root word behind the word, right, is there's a connotation of anger going on. Have you ever been angry at death? Have you ever been angry at the pain that death brings into our world? I think of the times, right, that we're called, to walk with someone who's lost a loved one at a young age. Maybe an overdose or something like that, right? And you just get angry at death. Just like, I've had that. Haven't you had that? Like that thing, I hate this. Okay. That's deeply moved in spirit. See, that's poetic, deeply moved in spirit. But the reality of that is you feel like you got punched in the gut. He's fully human. He has the same bodily frustrations and responses that our bodies have. So that's his body. And then when it says he's troubled, okay, that's the mental sensations that we go through. You've been there, right? You get the news of the loss of your loved one and your mind doesn't feel right. It feels fuzzy. It feels weird. You say, "I'm not myself. I don't know what's going on." Or you say, "This doesn't feel real," because you know what real feels like, and it just feels fuzzy right here. And you struggle to fall to sleep that night, and when you wake up the next morning, you're fine, but then you remember the news you got the day before, and you're back at fuzzy. He was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. He felt like he was punched in the gut, and his mind wasn't quite right. You've been there, right? I've been there. He's fully human. And then, what do you do when it feels like you've been punched in the gut and your mind isn't quite right? Jesus wept. He cried. When our minds can't take it anymore and our bodies can't take it anymore, our emotions pour out of our eyes. And we cry. And we weep. Now watch the next thing that it says. he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Jesus wept. The Jews said, "See how he loved him." See how he loved him. When we understand that Jesus is not just fully God, first step. Step number 2, he's fully man. Let your mind just explode by what I just said. God, stop, pause, think about this. He was willing to come and get punched in the gut, to cry, to weep. He was willing to come down from heaven and walk among us. See how he loved us. That he would come down and, right? He would willingly walk into those situations of pain. He would willingly walk into those situations of hurt. That's love. And see, if we just understand sequence 1, he's fully God, then we have this God, right? And this is good. There's nothing wrong with this. We should do this. This is the God of praise, right? Yay, God is powerful, God is good, and that's it. But when we get into his humanity, now he's the God of comfort. Now he's the God who can walk with us in the midst of our pain because he knows our pain. He understands our pain. And if he's only God, we say stuff like, if you were here, he wouldn't have died. How could God let this happen? But when we get that he's fully God and fully man, and then this is, okay, if there's a sequence, first we understand he's fully God, then we understand he's fully man. Then what does he say? Come follow me. As I walk into the dark and painful places, you walk into the dark and painful places. As I lay down my life for others, you lay down your life for others. As I reach out to the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you reach out to the least of these brothers and sisters of yours. Fully God, fully man. See how he loved him. For God so loved the world, he gave of himself. And now here's the thing. We don't want to stop at fully God. You're like, can we please stop at fully man? That was a little brutal. Like this, let's stop there, okay? But wait. As we might say, right? There's one more fully to understand. And this fully, again, if there's a sequence, if there's a pattern, this one is key. So we have to talk about the third person in this story. We've got Martha, helps us understand that Jesus is fully God. We got Mary, that helps us understand Jesus is fully man. We've got Lazarus now, who helps us understand the final fully. Works like this. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. Stop. Pause. This is why we know this story is not about me, and it's probably not about you. I can imagine if I was going to Lazarus' tomb, there would have been some fanfare, right? Yo, everybody, I know you're sad. I know you're bummed out. It's okay. I'm here. Did you get the newspaper reporters? Get ready to like this on Facebook. Somebody put this on Facebook and make sure this goes viral. Check out what I'm about to do. Fully God, fully man. Once more deeply moved. The reality and the pain of that death, even though he knows the resurrection and he knows the life, he doesn't He's able to be fully man in that moment. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. And that's what ancient graves were like. They would maybe sometimes have a little rut in the ground. They would carve out a rut in the ground so that stone could roll back and forth. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Then Jesus asked, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. He's fully God, he's fully man, and you and I are called to fully participate in this new life. We fully participate. So watch. Lazarus, come out. Lazarus, come out of that grave that you're in. God is calling me out of the graves and the caves that I live in. And he's calling you out of the graves and the caves that you live in. And he says, Joe, come out. Paul, come out. Sarah, come out. Okay, I won't get everybody, but I'm starting to look and you're like, don't say me. Right? I could say this, Matt, come out. Come out, right? Have you ever been in a cave of anger? A cave of bitterness? A cave of envy? Oh my gosh, why does everybody, God wants to free us. We participate in the resurrection when we come out of the caves and the graves that we are hiding in. When we come out of the darkness that is enveloping us and we say, I know how to get out of here. You are the light, and I'm going toward the light. Lazarus, come out. Now, and here's the thing, if you're a new Christian, you may think that you got to come out of one cave. Just little heads up. You got a whole bunch you're coming out of, right? You don't even know all the caves you're stuck in. I don't even know all the caves I'm stuck in. My caves of, I thought I came out of the cave of pride. No. Okay, I'm still working on coming out of the cave of pride. And God is still calling me out of it. And and if you're like me, God calls you out of the grave, you're like, this is good, I feel free, but yeah, that was kind of a cool cave. It's kind of good to be back there all by myself in my cave. And God says, Joe, come out of that crap. Enough. Now, okay, we fully participate. There's more, right? What does Jesus say to the crowd? Take off the grave clothes and let him go. When I come out of the cave, I'm bound in my grave clothes. And I need other people. My hands and my feet are bound. My face is covered. I need somebody else to start taking that off. I need the church to come around me and say, we got to get these off you. We got to get you free. See, we need each other. You show me a Lone Ranger Christian, and I'll show you someone who's afraid to come out of a cave. And it's easier to say, well, I'm just my Lone Ranger Christian, and I'm going to just stay here in the back. But, he's fully God. He's fully man. I'm not actually supposed to come out of my own grave and cave. Right? We're invited to participate. And we're invited to help take the grave clothes off the other people. We're invited to help them get free. The one guy who we started with, this Bruce Perry, he says it like this. This is how kids, again, in this book, and there's a bunch of stories in this book, the kid is literally put into a dog cage and kept there for years, right? How does that kid get to a place of healing and love? The more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely he will be to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agents of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love. That may sound like, well, that's, just scientific mumbo jumbo. That's science explaining the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the gospel of Jesus Christ in scientific terms. That's a very smart man who spent his life studying trauma saying, I know how this works. The key, you're going to be shocked, the key is love. Where have we heard that before? Over and over and over again. The key is love. Let me just give you a story of this. So you know that as a church, sometimes we're called to help out with funerals, and there's one tomorrow at Phillips that we'll be helping with, but it's not a family from our church, a family from the community. But I was meeting with this family. So this woman who's in her 70s, who just passed away this past week, she had struggled a little bit at the end, and now she's gone home to be with the Lord. But here's the thing. So I'm sitting with the family, and we're talking through, well, tell me about Alice. Tell me about her. And, well, she's a foster mom. She took in kids. And a lot of times she would take in kids like in emergency placements where they would just call on a Friday, and she would have a kid through the weekend, let's say, because, a relative couldn't be found over the weekend or whatever. So then I'm like, well, tell me how she grew up. Well, so when she was young, like 2 or 3, that age when you're in your brainstem where you need the rhythm, you need the consistency, you need the people to love you, to hold you, and put a bottle in your mouth and change your diaper. At that point of her development, she was torn away from all her family, split up from everybody because there was TB in the family, and they had to get everybody quarantined and into safe spots. And then you're quarantined, and so you're not getting a ton of human contact, and you're just at this big. Now her older sisters, who were some of the people I was meeting with, they remember that. She was 2 or 3. She didn't remember it. But that cave of brokenness, that cave of, why is this happening to me? She knew what it was like to be in that cave. And she knew how important foster families were and parents were. So as an adult, she goes back, and something in her says, I think I need to be a foster parent. And meeting with the family, I said, wow, she knew the pain of loss as a little child, so that's why she was a foster parent. And I just thought they were all going to say, yeah. And they all said, we never even thought of that before. And she never thought of that. She just did it. This is how it works, guys. He's fully God, he's fully human. We fully participate. When God calls you out of a cave or a grave, he calls you then to love the least of these who are still in that cave or that grave. And to go back and not to leave them behind. To fully participate in this God who is fully God, Jesus who is fully God and fully human, is to love the least of these, is to love the people who are trapped in the graves and the caves. And to let them know that there is a God who's real, there is a God of love, there is a God for them, and there is a God who has come, who's real. So ask yourself this: are you ready to fully participate in the resurrection and the life? And that means acknowledging that Jesus is fully God, and that means acknowledging that Jesus is fully man, and then going where he went as fully man. And then it also means, at the top level, if you will, that we are brutally self-honest. And we look in the mirror and we say, Lord, what grave or what cave are you calling me out of today? Where am I still not walking in the light? Where am I still walking in bitterness or anger or pride or envy or whatever my junk is? So, what grave are you being called out of right now? Do you got it? He is the resurrection and he is the life. Let him lead you into that light. Let him love you into that light. And what I saw him. It's legit. Sorry. So what grave are you being called out of right now? That's the journey, guys. We can stop at he's fully God and have this really yay worship, which is beautiful. We got to do that because he's God. We can stop that he's fully man and help other people by loving them in the difficult spots. Or we can say, Lord, come, Lord Jesus, come and transform me. I would invite you to go all the way and let him transform us.